Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, your host for the Voice of Leadership and for Dr. Karen Speaks Leadership. And today we are talking about the State of the Business Address. This is a very special meeting that every company needs to have. If you have more than one person, you need a State of the Business Address every so often. And what the purpose of this address is you want to inform all business associates of the key events since the last state of the business meeting. And a lot of times people don't realize that what they know, others have not heard and don't know about. So there has to be a mechanism, a forum for informing everyone. And when you inform people about what's going on in the business, you also have the opportunity to align all parts of the business on the same page. And that's important because if you're not aligned, you'll be using a lot of energy and power and pulling in very different directions. With alignment, you focus that energy and power, and you're more likely to get to where you're going because everybody knows where you're going and you're all heading with the same purpose in mind. You also want to use the State of the Business Address to engage the workforce in the success of the business. When people don't know what's going on, they can't really sign on to it and say, oh, I'm behind this, or this is something I'm going to support, or now I really understand. And so let me recommit myself to what we're doing. You also use the State of the Business Address to reinforce the cultural values, and we'll get into that a little bit more. What you're talking about during this address gives people pictures of what it looks like to live out the values of the corporation. When you also do the State of the Business Address, you're decreasing anxiety and fear, and you're quelling the rumors that happen and that occur in a vacuum of information. So when your people are informed, that takes the rumors off the table, and they will know when they hear a rumor, oh, that's not true, because I just heard in the State of the Business Address that such and such a thing is really what's going on. So it's a very important meeting. It has a great purpose in your organization. Now, here are some things you want to consider including in your State of the Business Address. One would be the current directions and also the actions that people are taking in the company to fulfill the mission and vision of the organization. You want to reiterate how every member of the workforce fits into this mission and vision, fits in today, and also your forecasting for the future. And you want everyone in every role to be able to see where do they fit, how are they contributing and adding value to the corporation. So you're reiterating that direction. And don't think to yourself, we've covered this before, everybody knows. People need to be reminded. You cannot over communicate on this direction part because there's so many other messages going on and activities happening. Mission drifting is just a part of the scenario. So you don't want people to get into mission drift because they haven't heard from you. You want to make sure to really cover the business successes. And a lot of times people forget that you have to celebrate successes. You have to show people routinely and regularly what does success look like in your company. So you want to highlight successful projects that have been done since the last meeting. You want to talk about new clients that the company has acquired, and perhaps those were some difficult clients that took a while to acquire them. And what's the benefit to the business that you have these clients, and what value are you going to be adding to that new customer? You want to talk about any new products that have been launched and what kind of revenues are coming in as a result of all of the work of the business. You want people to hear about the profitability of the company. You want them to hear about the success of the company and how you are fulfilling your mission through very specific examples. You also want to talk about problems that have been solved from maybe some past updates. Maybe 2 meetings ago, there was a big issue on the table, and the company was trying to figure out how to walk through it. And now you've resolved that issue, you've walked through it successfully. Well, inform the workforce, let them know about that success and what was done to get to a place of success. Now, thirdly, not only do you want to talk about the successes, you also want to talk about business challenges. What are the current issues to address? And what are your ideas and plans to resolve these issues? It's not enough just to say, okay, we have these challenges and to then act like you're clueless and have no idea about how to proceed forward. Now, that provokes more anxiety. Let the organization know that you and the executive team have been thinking about ways of moving forward on this issue. You have some plans in place. And you also want to inform them about these challenges because they may have some ideas even better than yours, and they will be able to weigh in and share those ideas. Sharing the challenges also keeps this presentation real. In other words, if people aren't hearing sort of like the challenging sides, they wonder if they're really hearing the truth. They wonder how trustworthy you are and if you're truly being transparent. So, in the State of the Business address, you are covering the good, the bad, and the ugly. However, you're doing it in a way that is aspirational, inspirational, and uplifting to the workforce. So even when you're talking about challenges, you're not saying, oh, woe is me, we don't know how to get through this, and we don't know if we'll survive another day. That's not the message. You talk about what you are doing to stay viable, what you're doing to thrive, and how you are covering certain shortfalls along the way. Just make sure to keep it in that positive tone as you share the state of the business. Also, number four, you want to share stories about individuals, stories about teams, people in the company who exemplify the company values. So, for example, suppose you have a value that says we are proactive about resolving customer concerns before they become problems. Well, you want to give examples of teams that actually did that with a customer, how they got in there early, they had an insight about something coming down the pike and what they did to educate that customer, what they did to do some brainstorming ahead of time, and to come up with a way forward that avoided a crisis and that avoided a true problem. So, if that's one of your values, you want to show people what it looks like to live that value out. You don't want to assume that everybody knows and sees these aspects already. They may not know these stories. They may be in another country, in another branch of the organization, and have not heard what's happening over in Asia Pacific, for example, when they might be in North America. So you want to share the stories widely and across the geographical locations of your organization. Number five, you want to be intentional about thanking the workforce for the success that the company has. You might thank specific people, specific teams as appropriate. And as you're talking about the business successes in general, thank the workforce and let them know none of this would be possible without their commitment, without their hard work every day, without their innovation and creativity at work. So make sure to say thank you and let them know that you know that they are the reason for the success of the business. And then number six, as you've covered all of these aspects of the business, you've shared the good news stories, the challenges, you've given examples. You now also want to ask for the help of the workforce. So, about those challenges, and you've already rolled out what you're thinking about, let them know you want to hear from them. You want to know if they have an idea that would benefit the organization in addressing some of the challenges mentioned and let them know how to move that idea forward. Sometimes you would have a place online where people can make a comment. You might have them go to their direct leadership person who they report to. There's all kinds of ways of gathering this information, and you want to let them know you want the information, you want to hear from them, and when people share good ideas, make sure to implement them. And also at the next state of the business meeting, to give credit to those people whose ideas you are implementing. This lets the organization know you are listening. It's not just what the executive team wants to do, it's also their voice and what they see. And sometimes, because of where they're sitting in the organization, they actually have more intel or knowledge about how to fix something than you might, or even the executive team. A lot of times, what executives forget, and this is why they're often cavalier about whether to do the state of the business meeting, is they don't remember that people don't know what you know. You're the CEO, you're the president of this company. You know a lot about the direction and what's going on. Also, your executive leadership team is meeting with you to talk about what's happening now and what the plan is for the future. Remember that the workforce is not privy to the conversations that are held in those executive team meetings. So you have to have mechanisms for getting that information out to the entire workforce. And do keep in mind that in the absence of information and updates, people make up their own stories, and those are usually far worse than what the true reality is. So tell your story, the one that's true, that you want the organization to know. Otherwise, be prepared for a lot of false narratives that are not so true and that might even discourage people. Now, what about the format for these meetings? Principally, you want that meeting to be led by the CEO of the company, or if you're in a different structure and it's the president of the company, then the top leader. People who work for your company need to hear your voice as the CEO and as the president. And that's crucial. You don't want to have it be a telephone game where you're passing information on to someone else. However, the workforce does not get to hear from you directly, so a lot of interpretation may get seeded into the original message, and it's diluted or it's changed in some way that's different from what you intend. So make sure that you, as the CEO and president, are the primary voice. And I would say this, when I say primary voice, that does not mean only voice. It's actually very powerful to have parts of this briefing be covered by members of the executive leadership team. So you want to have your executive team partners also involved. And what this shows is unity and alignment at the top leadership levels of the company. And you want the workforce to see that in action. So you all can have a piece in it and make sure also that that CEO voice is leading it and is also heard. It's also interesting. Another strategy you can use, this does not have to happen at every state of the business meeting, but this is a creative idea. You can include a client testimonial. You could have a client there live to really talk about why they are working with your company, to talk about the profound results that they are getting, what they're delighted about. And what this shows is your company why. You get to see the company why in action, and you want your workforce to know the benefit of the value that they are adding to customers and clients. And the person doesn't have to be there live. The customer could be on a video that you play for the workforce. Doesn't have to be overly long, but they share a little bit about why they're choosing your organization. You can also have a format on video or live where someone from your organization, maybe from your communications department, is interviewing that client and bringing out the best information, because sometimes customers are excited about you and they may not always know how to share the message without being interviewed by someone who is a little bit more savvy about a media kind of experience. So feel free to include some client and customer testimonials in the State of the Business address. This State of the Business is for the entire workforce. You want everyone to be included across all geographical regions, time zones, and because you're including it across all time zones, You want to be sensitive to the time that you hold the meeting. Of course, some people are going to have to attend the meeting very early in the morning. Others may be attending after hours in the evening if you have a global business, and yet you want everyone to have the opportunity to participate in this state of the business update. Frequency varies in terms of how often you should have these. I think for most businesses, 4 times a year quarterly makes a lot of sense, and for some, maybe 3 times a year. So, 3 or 4 times a year is a good optic to strive for in terms of frequency. I would not have this less than once or twice a year. So remember that if you go a long time, that's an opportunity for people to get off of the path that they're on. You want to keep people aligned and heading collectively in the same direction. If you meet only once or twice a year, you might consider having a meeting that is more like an in-person mini conference. And maybe it's a longer meeting because you are covering a whole lot of aspects of the business and you're only going to meet once or twice a year. I think that for larger and more complex businesses, and where the speed of business is very fast and the industry is volatile, you want to have more meetings because there's more to update the workforce about. So keep that in mind. If you're having regular meetings, and that includes the 3 times a year and quarterly meetings, you could have a format that's about an hour long, maybe an hour, hour and a half at the most. You don't need to belabor this. You're providing a high level overview. And the business units are also following up with some regional meetings or some country specific state of the business addresses that parallel what the overall company meeting is about. So they may cover some additional details in those separate meetings. So you're staying a lot at the high level so that an hour or an hour and a half should be plenty. And some companies who are having their state of the business address weekly or monthly, those meetings certainly could be an hour or less because you're doing a much more frequent update in that case. You also want to consider recording the meeting. Always there's someone who's not going to be there, who's sick or whatever, and you want the opportunity for them to hear and view that meeting later and hear the update. And I would also say that between meetings, it's important to continue to update the company through other mechanisms. So that might be through online sites that you have that are internal to your organization, where there's shared drives and where you're giving some information about the company, newsletters, perhaps some very short CEO videos and updates. So this is not the only time you're talking to the workforce. However, you're punctuating the state of the business meeting with in between meeting updates as well, and through various mechanisms. Now, you might wonder, well, what's the purpose of all of this? We've talked about some of it in terms of aligning the organization, having everyone be informed and on the same page and knowing all the same information. There are some additional benefits as well to having a state of the business meeting. One is when people hear about what's going on in the company, they can again rekindle the pride they have in the company and why they chose to join your organization and to work for the company. You want people to have a pride in the company because of the great work that you're doing and the value that you're adding in the world. It increases company loyalty when they hear about our company's on point. We're doing what we're supposed to do. And our customers and our clients, their condition is improved. We're adding value that they are not getting elsewhere. This inspires your workforce about the company purpose and the why, and it re engages them about being a part of the company team. What I find is that organizations that make sure they have a state of the business address, they retain more of their workforce members because in the absence of information, it also feels like a lack of connection. And when there's lack of connection, lack of information, people often leave because that's confusing. And as I mentioned earlier, that's when the fear and the anxiety rises. And this is especially true in hard times. So you want to make sure that you retain more people because you're sharing more. It also helps with selection because you can take snippets of your company successes and company story, and you can share that in the places where you are soliciting for jobs that are available and that are open. And when people see those snippets and the accomplishments of the company, the values exemplified in the promotional materials that are public, they will want to work for your company, those who align with those same values and who want to participate in the kinds of successes that you are experiencing in your company. This is also an added benefit because, as I said earlier, you are getting new ideas and solutions from the entire workforce about the challenges that the company is facing. The executive team does not know everything that you need in order to move forward and to find solutions to those challenges. So when you meet with the whole workforce, you are bringing in the collective wisdom and knowledge and expertise, gifts and talents of all those people you've hired so that they can help to also address the way forward with new solutions. You will also have more people who are living out the company values because as you share the stories and the examples, an aha goes off in their brain. Oh, that's what it looks like to be proactive. And I can do that in my part of the business in this way. It really gets them thinking about how they personally can live out the company values and live the culture that you're creating. The State of the Business Address also increases collaboration between people because as they hear what's going on in other regions and other functions and other parts of the business across the world, they will begin to see synergies between those different departments and functions and countries. And they might get excited about something that's happening, let's say over in Europe, that maybe they can use in Asia Pacific. So this allows that cross-fertilization and cross-collaboration in your organization. You're also sharing and seeding what I'll call best practices throughout the company. And that's really an important aspect as people are sharing what's working well. And this whole process increases trust. People sense that there's a high level of transparency and that increases their confidence in the company and in the leadership and where the company is going. And if I haven't mentioned it already, make sure that in your format, you include ample time for questions and answers. Even though I'm referring to this as a state of the business address, that doesn't mean it's a one-way conversation. You want to hear from the workforce their questions. You want to hear any comments they have, any concerns, because when you leave that state of the business meeting, there may be additional areas you need to think about and to address. And in that meeting at the time, you want to answer as many of these questions as you can so that people leave really feeling fully informed and as if they're part of the process and as if they have been heard. So even though I'm saying address, it's a two-way process and you do have Q&A as part of it. So as we're wrapping up this message for today, I want to think about a picture of what I'm talking about from the book of Nehemiah. And you may remember that the children of Israel were in captivity. And while they were in captivity, Jerusalem was in ruins, and the gates were all burned with fire, and the land was in poverty. And so Nehemiah was the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, and he got this report back from the people who came back and said, what was the state of Jerusalem? And he was very distressed. And ultimately, the king saw him when he was in this state of distress and wondered what was the problem. And of course, you really couldn't be sad around the king. That wasn't a good thing. You could lose your head over that. And so Nehemiah had been praying to God and seeking God. And initially, he was a little frightened about the king noticing that he was sad. And the king knew that this was nothing but sadness of heart because Nehemiah wasn't sick, so something else was going on. And of course, he told him about what was going on. The king was favorable towards him because God had already moved things around in the heavenlies to give Nehemiah favor with the king. And the king gave him provision, gave him all the time that he asked for and needed to go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls and gates of the city. And so when Nehemiah came, he walked through, he went through at night, he reconned the area, did reconnaissance to see what was the state of Jerusalem and what was it going to take to rebuild the environment. And then after he had assessed everything, he then had a state of Jerusalem kind of a meeting with the local leaders there. And he said, this is in Nehemiah, the second chapter, starting with verse 17. And it says, Then I said to them, You see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be of reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's word that he had spoken to me. So they said, Let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to this good work. So that's Nehemiah, the second chapter, verses 17 through 18. So I want you to notice several pieces of this State of Jerusalem message. He let them know what the challenges were, that the gates were burned, that the wall was broken down. And he didn't leave it there. He talked about the goodwill that he already had, the good favor that he had from King Artaxerxes. And he talked about what the king said and what the king's provision was. He was letting them know we have a green light from God. God has provided for us because you have to remember Nehemiah sought God first. And so the people, in hearing about the hand of God being good upon Nehemiah and all this, and the king's words and the king's provisions, they were inspired, motivated, energized to say, Let us rise up and build. And notice, the gates had been burned, the wall had been broken down for a long time before that, but now you have a man with vision coming in to give a picture of what is possible and to say, we have what we need in our hands, and we have the favor of the king, and of course, the favor of our God to get this done, who is the real king, and he was the real king of Israel. So keep that in mind as you are inspiring your organization so that they will put their hands also to the work in your company for the purpose, the calling, and the vision that God has given you as you lead your organization. So have a blessed week and remember to schedule your next State of the Business address. Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, President and CEO of TRANSLEADERSHIP Incorporated. Did you know that workplaces can make a significant difference in the lives of people and that you can create a positive culture that gets positive business results and also produces positive life experiences for your employees and your clients and customers? You can make a significant contribution to the world by creating the kind of culture where your people can bring their gifts to provide the most relevant and excellent products and services to your marketplace. What the research shows is that companies with excellent leadership are also more profitable. So as you flourish and as you grow in the world, you can do more for yourself as well as for others. So if this is resonating with you and you want to create a positive, profitable, and powerful corporate culture, and you care about succession, leaving the organization in a better position than when you found it, do keep in mind that that kind of legacy is something that's intentional. And I am happy to partner with you to take your organization to the next level and create that positive leadership culture. So reach me at Dr. Karen, at transleadership.com. Hi, this is Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, President and CEO of Trans Leadership Incorporated. And I want to let you know that I am running a special promotion right now. If you are a CEO or executive leader in a medium to large size company and you care about how your people are treated, and especially if you share our biblical values, and right now, you may be facing difficult decisions where you want some additional perspective. You may be planning for succession in your company and developing people and preparing the organization for that succession. Or perhaps right now you're going through change. You're leading change. Maybe there's a merger, there's an acquisition. Whatever you're facing in terms of leadership, including developing your executive team, contact me, give me a call so we can do a discovery meeting to see what's going on. And here's the special promotion. The promotion is that in addition to your discovery time, I will interview up to 3 people, additional people from your executive team, so you have even greater context and feedback about where to go next. So reach out to me at Dr. Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com, or phone me at 719-534-0949, extension 1. I look forward to hearing from you and to coming alongside you to complete and continue your leadership journey with a positivity and profitability in your organization. You've been listening to The Voice of Leadership with me, Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. And I want to give a special thanks to jazz saxophonist Ron McMillan for granting us permission to use his gifted music on our show. Thanks for listening, and remember to go to my website, transleadership.com, for more strategies, insights, and leadership resources.